The steering wheel feels unfamiliar beneath my palms as I pull out of Henderson's auto sales parking lot. The silver Honda Accord is 12 years old with 93,000 miles on it, but it's mine. All mine. No joint ownership, no arguments about whose turn it is to drive, no passive-aggressive comments about my parking. Just me in this car, with its slightly faded interior and that new car smell that's been replaced by something earthier, like old leather and distant memories of whoever owned it before. I'm Harper Coleman, 38 years old, recently divorced, and starting over in ways I never imagined I'd have to. 6 months ago, I was living in a 4-bedroom colonial in Westchester with my husband Derek and our comfortable, predictable life. Then I discovered text messages on his phone that shattered that illusion. The divorce was swift and brutal. He kept the house. I got the savings account, and here I am, driving a used car to my 1-bedroom apartment in White Plains, trying to figure out who Harper Coleman is when she's not someone's wife. The radio crackles with static as I fiddle with the stations. Nothing seems to work quite right. I reach for the GPS screen mounted on the dashboard, thinking I'll program my new address into it. The screen flickers to life, showing a map of the area. That's when I notice it. Under saved addresses, there's only one entry, not home or work or even mom's house. Just a single address in Beacon, New York, about 40 minutes north of here. And next to it, in quotation marks, 2 words that make my breath catch, waiting for you. My finger hovers over the delete button. The previous owner must have forgotten to clear the GPS. That's the logical explanation. But those words, waiting for you, they feel oddly personal, almost like a message left specifically for whoever would find this car next. I shake my head at my own foolishness. It's probably his mother's house or his girlfriend's place. Nothing mysterious about it. I merge onto the highway, heading toward my apartment. Traffic is light for a Thursday afternoon. The car handles well, smooth and responsive. My mind drifts to the mountain of unpacked boxes, waiting for me, the new job I start on Monday at a marketing firm in the city, the therapy appointment I need to schedule because my sister Emily keeps insisting I need to process my feelings, as if feelings are something you can just process like paperwork and file away neatly. But that GPS address keeps nagging at me. Waiting for you. Who talks like that? Who leaves a note like that in a car they're selling? I pull into the parking lot of my apartment complex, a bland brick building with 0 personality, but rent I can actually afford. As I gather my purse and the paperwork from the car purchase, my phone buzzes with a text from my mother. Dinner Sunday? I'm making pot roast. I stare at the message for a long moment before typing back, can't this week? Have plans. It's a lie. But I'm not ready for the inevitable interrogation about my life choices, about why I didn't try harder to save my marriage, about how women our age don't have the luxury of starting over. My mother, Patricia Coleman, has never been what you'd call emotionally supportive. She raised me alone after my father left when I was 6 months old. That's the story I grew up with. Thomas Morrison, the man who got her pregnant and then disappeared without a trace, leaving her to raise me in a cramped apartment in Yonkers. She worked 2 jobs, never dated, and made sure I understood that men were fundamentally unreliable. Don't ever depend on anyone but yourself, she'd say, her jaw set in that stubborn way that meant the conversation was over. I'd be lying if I said her worldview hadn't shaped mine. Maybe that's why my marriage fell apart. Maybe I was so determined to prove I didn't need Derek that I pushed him away. Or maybe he was just a cheater, and I'm making excuses for him like I always did. Inside my apartment, I drop my keys on the counter and stare at the boxes stacked against every wall. I should unpack. I should call Emily back. I should do 100 productive things. Instead, I find myself pulling up the GPS address on my phone. 47 Oak Ridge Road, Beacon, New York. I type it into Google Maps, and the street view shows an old Victorian house set back from the road, partially hidden by overgrown trees. The paint is peeling, the porch sags slightly, but there's something about it that looks cared for, despite its age. Flower boxes under the windows, a neat path leading to the front door. The curiosity gnaws at me all evening. By 9 o'clock, I've convinced myself that driving up there on Saturday would be a perfectly reasonable thing to do, just to satisfy my curiosity, just to see what's there. Maybe the previous owner is a sweet old lady who'll be confused but charmed by my visit. Maybe I'll discover it's just a random address and I can delete it and move on with my life. But waiting for you doesn't sound like a random anything. Friday passes in a blur of errands and unpacking. I manage to set up my bedroom and bathroom, hang curtains in the living room, and arrange my books on the shelves Derek didn't want. The apartment is starting to feel less like a temporary shelter and more like a place I might actually live. That night, I lie in bed scrolling through my phone, looking at photos of the house on Oak Ridge Road. I've found it on real estate websites, county records, even old newspaper archives. The house has been owned by someone named Walter Morrison for 42 years. Morrison, the same last name as my father. The coincidence makes my stomach twist. Morrison is a common enough name, I tell myself. It doesn't mean anything, but sleep doesn't come easily. Saturday morning dawns gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that makes you want to stay in bed with coffee and a good book. But I'm already dressed and caffeinated by 8, pacing my tiny living room, trying to talk myself out of this ridiculous expedition. What am I hoping to find? What if this Walter Morrison is some creepy old man who lures people to his house with mysterious GPS messages? What if it's dangerous? But a stronger part of me, the part that's been buried under years of being Derek's wife and Patricia's daughter, wants to know, needs to know. This might be the first genuinely spontaneous thing I've done in years. By 9:30, I'm in the car heading north on Route 9. The rain has stopped, leaving everything damp and gray. I pass through Peekskill, then Garrison, watching the Hudson River glitter in brief moments when the clouds break. The fall colors are past their peak, but there's still beauty in the bare branches and the way mist clings to the hillsides. As I drive, I think about my father, Thomas Morrison. I have exactly 3 photos of him, all taken before I was born. My mother kept them in a box in her closet, and I found them when I was 16, snooping where I shouldn't have been. In the pictures, he's young, maybe 25, with dark hair and a smile that crinkles his eyes. He looks happy in a way I've never seen my mother look. When I asked her about him, she'd shut down completely. He left us. That's all you need to know. But what if that's not all I need to know? What if there's more to the story? The GPS announces that I'm approaching my destination. My heart pounds as I turn onto Oak Ridge Road, a narrow street lined with old houses, each one set back from the road with generous yards. Number 47 appears on the right, the Victorian I saw in the photos. Up close, it's even more impressive, despite its obvious age and need for maintenance. 3 stories tall, with a turret on one corner, wraparound porch, and stained glass windows that catch what little light filters through the clouds. I park on the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turn white. This is insane. I should leave. I should delete the address and forget this whole thing. But I'm already unbuckling my seatbelt, already opening the door, already walking up the cracked concrete path toward the porch. The front door is solid oak with an oval window of beveled glass. I raise my hand to knock, then hesitate. What am I going to say? Hi, I bought a car with your address in it? That sounds ridiculous. But before I can decide, the door swings open. The man standing there is old, probably in his mid-80s, with white hair that's still thick and brushed back from his forehead. He's tall, even with the slight stoop of age, and his eyes are a startling blue. He's wearing pressed khakis and a cardigan sweater over a button-down shirt like he's expecting company. But what stops my breath entirely is his face. Even weathered by age, I can see the resemblance to the man in those photographs in my mother's closet. The same shape of jaw, the same way his eyes crinkle at the corners. "Harper," he says, and it's not a question. It's a statement of recognition, of relief, of something I can't quite name. "You came. I'd almost given up hope." I take a step back, my hand reaching for the porch railing to steady myself. "How do you know my name? Who are you?" He smiles then, sad and gentle. "I'm Walter Morrison. I'm your grandfather, and I've been waiting 37 years to meet you." The world tilts slightly. I hear my own voice asking, "How is that possible? My father left when I was a baby. My mother said he wanted nothing to do with us." Walter's expression darkens. "Your mother said a lot of things. Would you please come inside? I have so much to tell you, and I'm afraid we don't have much time." Something in his voice, in the urgency beneath the gentleness, makes me nod. I follow him into the house, into a living room that smells of old books and lemon furniture polish. The furniture is dated but clean, and every surface is covered with framed photographs. As Walter gestures for me to sit on the sofa, I find myself staring at these pictures. A young couple on their wedding day, a baby, then a toddler, then a young man in a graduation gown. And in the more recent photos, that same young man with a woman who looks vaguely familiar, holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Walter notices me looking. "That's my son, Thomas, and that's you, Harper, about 2 weeks old, I believe. It's one of only 4 photographs I have of you." My throat constricts. I don't understand. If you're my grandfather, why have I never met you? Why has my mother never mentioned you? Walter lowers himself into an armchair across from me, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose body doesn't always cooperate. Because Patricia made sure of it. When she and Thomas split up, she told him he could never see you. She threatened to file harassment charges if he tried to contact her. She moved without telling him where she'd gone. She changed her phone number. She erased him completely from your life. The words hit me like physical blows. But why? Why would she do that? Because she's a woman who needs complete control, Walter says, his voice heavy with old anger and older sorrow. And Thomas threatened that control by being someone you might love more than her. I shake my head, trying to reconcile this image with the mother I know. Patricia Coleman, who worked 2 jobs to support us, who never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference, who taught me to be independent and strong. That doesn't make sense. She sacrificed everything for me. Did she? Walter leans forward, his blue eyes intense. Or did she make you believe she sacrificed everything so you'd feel obligated to her? Harper, I'm not saying your mother didn't work hard. I'm not saying she didn't care for you in her way. But there's a difference between caring for someone and controlling them. I stand abruptly, feeling the need to move, to process this information somewhere other than sitting still. I walk to the window, looking out at the overgrown garden, the leaves scattered across the lawn. My father, Thomas? Where is he? Why didn't he find a way to reach me when I got older? The silence behind me stretches too long. When I turn back, Walter's face has crumpled with grief. Thomas died 9 years ago. Cancer. He spent his whole life hoping you'd find him, hoping your mother would change her mind, hoping that somehow, someday, he'd get to know his daughter. The room seems to lose air. I sink back onto the sofa, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. 9 years ago. I was 29. We could have... I know, Walter says softly. I know. We sit in silence for several minutes. Outside, a bird calls from somewhere in the trees. Inside, an old clock ticks on the mantel, marking time that can never be recovered. Finally, I find my voice. How did you get the car to me? How did you even know I was looking for one? Walter's mouth curves in a small smile. Your sister, Emily. She posts quite a bit on social media. About 3 weeks ago, she mentioned you were car shopping after your divorce. I've been following both of you online for years, Harper. It's not the same as knowing you, but it was all I had. I bought the car, had it detailed, programmed the GPS, and listed it at a price I knew you could afford. I made sure it went to Henderson's Auto Sales because I knew you'd been looking in that area. The calculated nature of it should feel creepy, but somehow it doesn't. It feels desperate. It feels like a dying man's last hope to connect with his granddaughter. You said we don't have much time. What did you mean? Walter touches his chest lightly. Heart failure? The doctors give me weeks, maybe a couple of months. I've made my peace with it. I've had a good life, despite losing my son too soon. But I couldn't die without trying to tell you the truth about your father, without giving you a chance to know who he really was. Tears. I didn't know I was holding back start to flow. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to think. My entire life, my entire understanding of my family, it's all a lie. Walter finishes gently. Not all of it, perhaps, but the foundation you built everything on, yes, that was a lie. I wipe my eyes with the back of my hand, angry at myself for crying, angry at my mother for reasons I'm still trying to articulate, angry at Thomas for dying before I could meet him, angry at the whole impossible situation. I need proof. I can't just take your word for this. I need to see something concrete. Walter nods as if he expected this. Of course, I have letters Thomas wrote to you, dozens of them, that he never got to send because he didn't know where you were. I have the custody documents from when Patricia cut off all his parental rights. I have photographs, birth certificates, hospital records. I have everything, Harper. I've been collecting it for 37 years, hoping someday I'd get to show you. He stands slowly and walks to an old roll-top desk in the corner of the room. From one of the drawers, he pulls out a thick accordion file folder, so stuffed with papers that it barely closes. He brings it back and sets it on the coffee table between us. This is your father's life, Walter says. These are the pieces of it that should have included you but didn't. Take it. Read it. Decide for yourself what you believe. I stare at the folder, my hands trembling. Opening it means accepting that everything I thought I knew might be wrong. It means confronting my mother with questions she's spent my entire life refusing to answer. It means potentially destroying the relationship with the only parent I've ever known. But not opening it means living the rest of my life wondering what was in there, wondering who my father really was, wondering if my mother's version of events was the truth or just her truth. I reach for the folder. Can I take this with me? I need time to process all of this. It's yours, Walter says. It's always been yours. I'm just the keeper until you were ready to claim it. I stand, clutching the folder to my chest like a life preserver. I should go. I need to think. I need to. I understand, Walter says, rising with me. But Harper, please, come back. Come back soon. I'd like to tell you about your father, about the man he was, not the man your mother made him out to be. And I'd like to get to know you, even if it's just for a little while. I nod, not trusting my voice. At the door, I pause and turn back. Why Oak Ridge Road? Why this address? Walter's smile is sad but warm. Thomas and I restored this house together when he was in his 20s. It was going to be his someday. He talked about raising his family here, about you growing up in rooms he'd painted himself. He died in the bedroom upstairs, Harper. His last words were about you. Tell her I never stopped loving her. So I've been waiting here, in this house that was supposed to be yours, hoping you'd find your way home. I can't speak. I just turn and walk quickly to my car, the folder pressed against my chest, tears streaming down my face. I don't look back as I drive away, but in my rearview mirror, I can see Walter standing in the doorway, watching me go. The drive back to White Plains is a blur. My mind races with questions. with doubts, with the terrible certainty that my life is about to change in ways I can't predict or control. When I finally reach my apartment, I drop the folder on my kitchen table and stare at it for a long time. Then I pour myself a large glass of wine and open it. The first document is a birth certificate, my birth certificate, but this one lists both parents, Patricia Ann Coleman and Thomas Richard Morrison. I've never seen this version before. The one my mother gave me when I needed it for my driver's license only listed her name in the father section. It said unknown. Beneath that are custody documents. I'm not a lawyer, but even I can understand the harsh language. Patricia Coleman is granted sole custody. Thomas Richard Morrison's parental rights are terminated. There's a restraining order, dated 3 months after my birth, barring Thomas from coming within 500 feet of Patricia or me. The reason listed is harassment and threatening behavior. But then I find a series of letters from Thomas to Patricia, begging her to reconsider. The letters are desperate, but not threatening. They're the words of a man pleading for a chance to know his daughter. Please, Patricia, I'll do anything. I just want to be part of Harper's life. I'll take whatever time you're willing to give me, please. The letters stop abruptly after the restraining order. Then there are new letters, dozens of them, addressed to me but never sent. Each one dated, each one sealed in an envelope with my name written in careful script. I open one, dated on my first birthday. Dear Harper, today you turned 1 year old. I wonder if you took your first steps yet. I wonder if you said your first word. I wonder if you look like your mother, or if you have my eyes. I wonder if you'll ever read this. I hope so. I hope someday you'll know that I loved you every single day of your life, even if I couldn't be there. Love always, Dad. I read through the entire folder. Letters for every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone he imagined I might have. Photos of Thomas through the years, aging from the young man in my mother's pictures to a man in his 40s, his face marked by illness. There are report cards and awards I don't remember earning, somehow obtained through methods I don't understand. Evidence that he was watching, always watching, from whatever distance my mother had forced between us. By the time I finish, it's after midnight, and my wine glass is empty. My phone shows 6 missed calls from my mother and 3 from Emily. I call Emily back. Harper, where have you been? Mom's been calling me, freaking out that you're not answering. I take a breath. Em, I need to ask you something. Did you post about me looking for a car? There's a pause. Yeah, like 3 weeks ago. Why? Did you ever wonder about our father? The pause is longer this time. Harper, what's going on? Are you okay? I met someone today, someone who knew Dad, someone who has a very different version of the story than what Mom told us. Emily's voice drops to a whisper. Who? Our grandfather, Walter Morrison. The silence on the other end is so complete, I check to make sure the call hasn't dropped. Finally, Emily speaks, her voice shaky. We have a grandfather? We did. We do. He's dying, Em, and he has proof that Mom lied to us our entire lives about why Dad left. Emily exhales sharply. Harper, this is crazy. Are you sure this guy's legit? How do you know he's not some scammer? Because I have a file full of documents and letters and photographs. Because he looks just like the pictures of Dad in Mom's closet. Because everything he told me makes a terrible kind of sense. What are you going to do? Emily asks. I'm going to talk to Mom. Tomorrow. Are you going to come with me? Another long pause. Yes. Yeah, I'll come. But Harper, what if it's true? What if Mom really did keep him from us? How do we even process that? I don't know, I admit, but I have to find out. We make plans to meet at my apartment at 10 the next morning before driving to Mom's house together. After we hang up, I sit at my kitchen table, staring at the scattered documents, trying to reconcile the mother I know with the woman described in these pages, the mother who read me bedtime stories and taught me to ride a bike and sat up with me when I had nightmares. How does that same woman deliberately erase a father from his child's life? I think about my marriage to Derek, how I always felt like I had to be independent, couldn't rely on him, couldn't show vulnerability, how my mother's voice was always in my head, warning me not to depend on anyone. Was that protective advice born from real abandonment, or was it her projecting her own need for control? Sleep doesn't come that night. Instead, I read and reread the letters from my father, memorizing his handwriting, the way he signed "Love Always Dad" at the bottom of each one. By morning, I feel like I know him in some strange, incomplete way, like I've been given pieces of a person and asked to assemble them into someone real. Emily arrives at my apartment exactly at 10, her face pale and drawn. She's 35, 3 years younger than me, and we've always been close, despite our mother's tendency to play us against each other. She has our mother's blonde hair and green eyes, while I inherited the dark hair and blue eyes from the Morrison side. "Show me," she says, before even saying hello. I spread the documents across my table, watching her face as she reads through them. Her expressions shift from skepticism to shock to anger to grief, mirroring my own journey from the night before. "This changes everything," she says finally, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. "Everything we thought we knew about our family, about why Mom is the way she is, about why we are the way we are. Harper, what the hell do we do with this?" "We ask her for the truth," I say, trying to sound more confident than I feel. "We show her the documents, and we ask her to explain." Emily nods slowly. Okay, let's do this before I lose my nerve." The drive to our mother's house in Yonkers feels longer than it should. Emily white-knuckles the passenger door handle the entire way, occasionally muttering under her breath. I've gathered the most important documents into a folder: the custody papers, the restraining order, a few of the letters. Proof that can't be explained away. Our mother lives in the same small house she moved to when I was 12, a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. The lawn is immaculately maintained, the shutters freshly painted. Everything about it screams control and order, just like the woman who lives there. Patricia opens the door before we even knock, her face tight with worry that shifts to suspicion when she sees both of us together. "What's wrong? Is someone hurt?" "We need to talk, Mom," I say, my voice steadier than I expected. "Can we come in?" She steps aside, her eyes moving between Emily and me like she's trying to calculate what's happening. We follow her into the living room, the same space where we spent countless Sunday dinners, where we opened Christmas presents, where she told me Derek wasn't good enough for me long before the divorce proved her right. "What's this about?" Patricia asks, sitting in her usual armchair like a queen on her throne. I place the folder on the coffee table between us. "I met Walter Morrison yesterday." The color drains from my mother's face. For a moment, she looks like she might faint. Then her features harden into something cold and implacable. "Get out of my house." "No," I say, surprising myself with the firmness of my voice. "Not until you explain why you lied to us our entire lives. Not until you tell us the truth about our father." Patricia stands abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that makes me flinch. "You want the truth? Your father was a controlling, manipulative man who tried to isolate me from my friends and family. He wanted to own me, to own you. I did what I had to do to protect us." The words come out in a rush, rehearsed, like she's been preparing this defense for 37 years. But there's something in her voice that doesn't quite ring true, a tremor beneath the certainty that makes me wonder if she's trying to convince us or herself. Emily opens the folder with deliberate slowness and pulls out one of Thomas's letters. Her hands shake as she unfolds the yellowed paper. "This doesn't sound like a controlling man, Mom. Listen to this." She begins to read aloud, her voice breaking on certain words. Dear Patricia, I know you're angry with me. I know I pushed too hard about wanting to be involved in Harper's care, but please understand, I'm not trying to control you. I'm just trying to be her father. I'm terrified I'll do something wrong, that I'll miss some important moment, that she won't know how much I love her. Please, can we talk about this? Can we find a way to co-parent that works for both of us? I'm begging you, don't shut me out. The silence in the room is deafening. Patricia's face has gone pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. That was written 2 weeks after you got the restraining order. Emily continues, her voice hardening. 2 weeks after you claimed he was threatening you. Does this sound like threats to you? Patricia reaches for the letter, her movements sharp and defensive, but Emily pulls it back. How did you get that? What else did that man give you? He had no right to keep those letters, to give them to you. They were private. Private? I hear my voice rising, feel the anger I've been suppressing since yesterday bubbling to the surface. You mean the letters our father wrote to us? The letters we should have received but never did because you decided we didn't deserve to know he cared about us? Everything, I say, standing now too, facing her across the coffee table that suddenly feels like a battlefield. Walter gave us everything. The custody documents that show you lied about Dad being threatening, the restraining order that was based on false accusations, the letters Dad wrote to us every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone that we never got to read. Mom, he died 9 years ago. My voice breaks on these words, the full weight of this loss finally hitting me. He died in 2014. I was 29 years old. Emily was 26. We were adults. We could have known him. We could have had a relationship with him. We could have been there when he was sick, could have said goodbye. Why did you take that from us? Patricia sits back down, her movements stiff and jerky like a puppet whose strings have been cut and then hastily reattached. Her face has transformed from defensive anger to stubborn defiance. You don't understand. You weren't there. You don't know what it was like being 23 and pregnant and terrified. Then help us understand, Emily says, moving to sit on the edge of the couch, her posture tense, ready to flee or fight. Tell us what happened. Tell us why you thought the only solution was to erase our father from our lives. Patricia stares at her hands, twisting the rings on her fingers. One of them is the engagement ring Thomas gave her. I realize with a jolt. She still wears it after all these years, on her right hand instead of her left. What does that mean? I was young, she begins, her voice softer now, but no less defensive. I'd just graduated college. I was working at a law firm as a paralegal, trying to figure out my life. I met Thomas at a friend's barbecue. He was working as a carpenter, building custom furniture, helping his father restore that monstrosity of a house in Beacon. He was charming, attentive. He made me laugh. We fell hard and fast. She pauses, her eyes distant with memory. 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't ready. I had plans, goals, a career I wanted to build. But Thomas was thrilled. Immediately started talking about marriage, about moving in together, about how we'd make it work. He didn't ask what I wanted. He just assumed I'd want the same things he did. Most people would call that being excited about becoming a father, I say quietly, not controlling. Patricia's eyes flash. You don't know what it was like. Every decision, every choice, he had an opinion. What obstetrician I should see, whether I should keep working during the pregnancy, what we should name the baby. When I said I wanted to wait on marriage, wanted to take things slower, he acted like I was being unreasonable. Like my hesitation meant I didn't love him. Or maybe he was hurt, Emily suggests. Maybe he wanted to build a life with you and couldn't understand why you were pulling away. I wasn't pulling away, Patricia insists. I was trying to maintain some independence. I was trying not to lose myself completely in this relationship, in motherhood, in all these expectations he had about what our life should look like. I pull out another document from the folder, the one I've been holding in reserve. It's a statement from Patricia's best friend at the time, someone named Jennifer Caldwell, written 3 years after the restraining order was issued. Walter had tracked her down, had asked her to write down what she remembered. "Mom, do you remember Jennifer Caldwell?" Patricia's face goes rigid. What does Jennifer have to do with this? "She gave a statement to Walter. She said you told her you were planning to break up with Thomas even before I was born, that you decided you didn't want to be with him long term, but you didn't know how to tell him. She said after I was born, Thomas became more involved, more present, and it made you panic because you couldn't figure out how to end the relationship without him fighting for custody." Jennifer didn't know what she was talking about, Patricia snaps. She was jealous that I had a man who wanted to be involved with his child. She was dealing with her own issues. Was she? Emily asks. Or is she just someone who told the truth when you didn't want to hear it? Patricia stands again, pacing now, her movements agitated. "You're twisting everything, making me out to be some monster who deliberately destroyed your lives. I did what I thought was best. Thomas was becoming obsessive. He wanted to be at every doctor's appointment, wanted to help with every feeding, wanted to be consulted on every decision. I felt suffocated." "You felt like you had to share your daughter with her father," I say, the realization dawning with painful clarity. "You couldn't stand not being the only important person in her life." "Then help us understand," Emily says, her voice breaking. "Tell us your side of the story." Our mother is silent for a long moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. When she finally speaks, her voice is quiet but hard. "I was 23 when I met Thomas Morrison. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. We moved fast, too fast. I was pregnant within 3 months of meeting him. He wanted to get married, but something in my gut told me to wait." She looks up at us, her eyes distant with memory. "After you were born, Harper, everything changed. He wanted to make all the decisions. What doctor you saw, what formula you used, when you slept. He questioned everything I did. He made me feel like I was incompetent, like I couldn't be trusted to care for my own baby. Or maybe he just wanted to be involved?" I say quietly. "Maybe he wanted to be a father." Patricia's jaw tightens. "You weren't there. You don't know what it felt like to be questioned constantly, to have someone undermining your every decision. I told him to back off, to give me space. He refused, so I did what I had to do." "You got a restraining order based on lies," Emily says, her voice hard. "The documents say he was threatening you, but his letters show nothing but love and desperation." "I did what I thought was best," Patricia insists. "I protected you from a man who would have made all our lives miserable with his need to control everything." I lean forward, my hands shaking. "Or you projected your own need to control onto him. Mom, I've spent my entire life afraid to depend on anyone because you taught me that people leave, that I have to be completely self-sufficient, and it's all based on a lie." Patricia's composure finally cracks. "I gave you everything. I worked 2 jobs. I sacrificed everything for you girls." "We know," Emily says, tears streaming down her face. "We know you worked hard. But you also kept us from our father because you couldn't stand the idea of sharing us with anyone. That's not protection, Mom. That's possession." The words hang in the air like a bomb. Patricia stares at us, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Finally, she stands. "If you're going to side with a dead man over your mother, then you can leave. Both of you." I stand too, gathering the folder. "We're not choosing sides, Mom. We're trying to understand the truth. But if you can't even acknowledge that you might have been wrong, if you can't see how much damage you've done, then maybe we do need to leave." As Emily and I walk to the door, Patricia calls after us. "You'll regret this. You'll realize I was right, and by then, it will be too late." Outside, Emily and I sit in my car for several minutes, neither of us able to speak. Finally, she turns to me. "What do we do now?" I think about Walter Morrison, waiting in his house on Oak Ridge Road, dying alone with nothing but photographs of grandchildren he never got to know? We go back, and we learn about the father we never got to have, and we figure out the rest as we go. The drive back to Beacon feels like a pilgrimage. Emily sits in the passenger seat, reading through the letters I haven't had time to share with her yet, occasionally wiping tears from her face. Neither of us speaks much. We're both processing too much to form coherent thoughts. When we pull up to the Victorian house on Oak Ridge Road, Walter is sitting on the porch despite the cold October air. He stands when he sees us, his face lighting up with surprised joy when Emily gets out of the car behind me. "You must be Emily," he says, his voice warm. "You look just like your grandmother. She would have loved to meet you." Emily breaks down then, walking up the porch steps and hugging this stranger, this grandfather we never knew existed. Walter holds her gently, patting her back like he's been waiting his whole life for this moment, when she finally pulls back, wiping her eyes. He looks at both of us with such tenderness that I feel my own tears start again. "Come inside," he says. "I'll make us some tea, and I'll tell you everything you want to know about your father." We spend the next several hours in Walter's living room, surrounded by photographs and memories, listening to stories about Thomas Morrison that paint a picture of a man we should have known, but never got the chance to. "Your father was brilliant with his hands," Walter says, gesturing to the built-in bookshelves that line one wall. "He made those when he was 22. See how the wood grain matches perfectly at each seam? That takes real skill and patience. He could look at a piece of wood and see what it wanted to become." I run my fingers along the smooth surface of the shelves, trying to feel some connection to the man who made them. "What else did he build?" Walter stands slowly, wincing slightly as his joints protest, and leads us through the house, pointing out Thomas's work. The staircase railing with its intricate carved details, the window seats with hidden storage underneath, the kitchen cabinets that look plain at first glance but reveal clever organization systems when you open them. This whole house was his love letter to craftsmanship, Walter explains. "After you were gone, Harper, he threw himself into this work. Some days I'd find him in the workshop at 2 a.m, covered in sawdust, working on some detail that no one would ever notice but him. I'd tell him to come inside, get some sleep, and he'd say, 'I need to make this perfect, Dad. Harper's going to live here someday. Everything needs to be perfect for her.'" The words hit me like a physical blow. Emily grabs my hand, squeezing tight. "He never stopped hoping?" I whisper. "Even after years passed?" "Never," Walter confirms. "Hope was all he had. He kept a journal, wrote in it every day, recording his thoughts, his feelings, imagining conversations he might have with you someday. He'd write things like, 'Today Harper turned 8. I wonder if she lost her first tooth yet. I wonder if she's scared of the dark like I was. I wonder if anyone's there to check under her bed for monsters.'" Emily's crying openly now. "Where is this journal? Can we read it?" Walter nods. "I have it. I have everything, but maybe not all at once. Some things are too painful to absorb in a single day." He's right. Already I feel like I'm drowning in grief for a man I never knew, for a relationship that was stolen from us, for all the moments we should have shared, but didn't. "Tell us about when he was young," I say, needing to know something happier. "Before all this happened, what was he like as a kid?" Walter's face lightens with the shift in topic. He leads us back to the living room and pulls out an old photo album. "Thomas was curious about everything," he says, opening to a picture of a gap-toothed boy of about 7 holding up a tadpole in a jar. He was always bringing home some creature he'd found, insisting we help him take care of it until it was ready to go back to the wild. His mother, your grandmother Ellen, she'd indulge him even when it meant we had aquariums and terrariums all over the house. "Ellen died when Thomas was 16, Walter continues, his voice heavy with old sorrow. breast cancer, it hit him hard. He withdrew for a while, spent all his time in the workshop I'd set up in the garage. That's when he really learned carpentry, using it as a way to process his grief. He'd make these beautiful boxes and give them away to people who needed comfort. Made one for every family at his mother's funeral who'd lost someone they loved. He shows us more photos. Thomas at his high school graduation, grinning despite the sadness in his eyes. Thomas at trade school, learning advanced carpentry techniques. Thomas at 25, in this very living room, showing off a rocking chair he'd made for Walter's birthday. He was a good son, Walter says simply. Kind, thoughtful, maybe a little too serious sometimes. He felt things deeply, you know? When he loved completely. That's why losing you broke him so thoroughly. He'd already lost his mother. Losing his daughter felt like the universe was taking everyone he loved. Emily's still flipping through the photo album when she stops on a picture that makes her gasp. It's Thomas and Patricia together, clearly early in their relationship. They're at some kind of outdoor concert, Patricia's head on Thomas's shoulder, both of them smiling. Thomas's hand is resting protectively on her stomach, which is slightly rounded with early pregnancy. He looks happy here, Emily says softly. They both do. They were, Walter agrees. For a while, anyway. Thomas was over the moon about becoming a father. He'd already started sketching out plans for a nursery, buying books about child development, asking me endless questions about what it was like raising him. Patricia seemed happy, too, in those early months. But after Harper was born, something shifted. What do you mean? I ask, leaning forward. Walter considers his words carefully. Patricia's mother died when she was young, too. Car accident when Patricia was 11. Her father remarried quickly, and Patricia never got along with her stepmother. She told Thomas once that she'd felt abandoned, replaced, like she didn't matter anymore. I think when Harper was born and Thomas became so focused on being a father, Patricia felt that same abandonment all over again, like she was losing him to the baby. The psychology of it clicks into place, so she made sure she couldn't lose me by making sure no one else could have me. I think that was part of it, Walter says, but I also think she genuinely believed Thomas was trying to control her. In her mind, his involvement wasn't love, it was dominance. She couldn't see the difference. We sit in silence processing this. Understanding the psychology doesn't excuse what Patricia did, but it does make it slightly more comprehensible. She was acting from her own trauma, her own fear of abandonment and loss of control. I have something else to show you, Walter says, standing again. He walks to the desk and returns with a small wooden box, intricately carved with flowers and vines. Thomas made this for Harper's first birthday. He brought it to me 3 days before the restraining order was issued. Said he wanted to give it to Harper himself, to start a tradition of making her something special every year. When he couldn't see her, he kept making them anyway, one for each birthday. He opens a closet door, and my breath catches. Inside are 17 more boxes, each one slightly larger than the last, each one more elaborately decorated. They're stunning works of art, each one representing a year of my life that Thomas spent loving me from a distance. He made one every year until his illness made it impossible, Walter explains. The last one is for your 17th birthday. He died a few months after that. Emily and I approach the boxes like they're sacred artifacts, because in a way, they are. They're physical proof that we were loved, that we were thought about, that somewhere out there, a man we never knew was marking our birthdays with his own private ritual of hope and grief. Can we open them? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. They're yours, Walter says. They were always yours. What was he like after? Emily asked quietly. After we were gone? Walter's face clouds with old sorrow. Broken. For a long time, He was just broken. He threw himself into work, into fixing up this house, anything to keep from thinking about the daughter he'd lost. Eventually, he learned to live with it, but the grief never really left him. Every time I saw him looking at those photographs of you as a baby, wondering what you looked like now, what kind of person you were becoming, it broke my heart all over again. Did he ever try to find us? I ask. Walter nods. Many times. But Patricia was careful. She never stayed in one place long enough for him to track her down. She changed jobs frequently. She didn't have social media back then. It was like she deliberately made herself impossible to find. And when we got older, Emily presses, when we were teenagers, adults, why didn't he reach out then? He was afraid, Walter says simply. Afraid that you'd reject him? Afraid that Patricia had poisoned you against him so thoroughly that you'd want nothing to do with him. And then he got sick, and time ran out. We sit in silence absorbing this. Our father, spending 37 years loving us from a distance, too afraid to reach out, dying with our names on his lips. The tragedy of it is overwhelming. I want to see his room, I say suddenly, the room where he died. I want to see where he last was. Walter looks surprised but nods. Of course. Follow me. We climb the stairs to the second floor, Emily and me trailing behind our grandfather's slow progress. The house is beautiful, despite its age, with original woodwork and stained glass windows. Walter opens a door at the end of the hall, revealing a bedroom that's been carefully preserved. The furniture is simple, but well made, clearly handcrafted. The bed is covered with a quilt in shades of blue and green. On the nightstand is a photograph in a silver frame. Me and Emily, probably 3 and 1 years old, playing in someone's backyard. Neither of us has any memory of when or where it was taken. He kept that photo by his bed for 34 years, Walter says. It was one of the last things he looked at before he died. Emily picks up the frame, tracing our baby faces with her finger. I can't believe we lost all this time. I can't believe Mom took this from us. I walk to the window, looking out at the overgrown garden below. I think about Patricia, alone in her house, clinging to her version of events, because admitting she was wrong would mean admitting she stole something precious from all of us. I think about Thomas, lying in this bed, dying with regrets he could never resolve. I think about Walter, spending 9 years alone in this house, watching his son die, and then trying to find a way to reach the grandchildren who didn't know he existed. Thank you, I say, turning back to Walter. Thank you for not giving up, for finding us, for giving us the truth, even though it's painful. Walter's eyes fill with tears. You're my family. You're all I have left. I had to try. We spend the rest of the afternoon in that house, looking through more photographs, reading more letters, piecing together the life of the man who was our father. By the time we leave, promising to return the next day, Emily and I both feel like we've gained something precious even as we're grieving what we lost. On the drive back, Emily finally speaks the question that's been hanging between us all day. What do we do about Mom? I think about this for several miles. I don't know. Part of me is so angry, I never want to speak to her again. But she's still our mother. She still raised us. She still worked those 2 jobs and sacrificed for us. But she also lied to us for 37 years, Emily points out. She kept us from our father out of her own need for control. How do we forgive that? I don't know if we can, I admit. Not right away anyway. Maybe not ever, but we have to decide what kind of people we want to be. Do we want to be like her, holding on to anger and control? Or do we want to be different? Emily is quiet for a long time. I want to be different, but I also don't want to pretend everything is okay when it's not. Agreed, I say. So maybe we take time. We process this. We spend time with Walter while we still can, and then we figure out what, if anything, we can have with Mom moving forward. The next few weeks fall into a pattern. Every weekend, Emily and I drive to Beacon and spend time with Walter. He tells us more stories about Thomas, shows us projects they worked on together, introduces us to neighbors who remember our father as a kind, helpful man. We help Walter with tasks he can no longer manage alone, fixing loose porch boards, raking leaves, organizing papers. His health is visibly declining. Each week he's a little weaker, a little more tired, but his joy at having us in his life seems to give him energy he shouldn't have. I can die happy now, he tells us one afternoon. I got to know my granddaughters. I got to tell you about your father. That's all I wanted. Patricia calls repeatedly, leaving voicemails that cycle between angry, "How dare you believe that man's lies?" manipulative, "I guess I know where I stand with my daughters," and desperate, "Please, just let me explain." We don't return her calls. The wound is too fresh, the betrayal too deep. My job at the marketing firm is going well. I throw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. My colleagues know I'm going through family stuff, but don't pry. Emily is struggling more, calling me late at night to process her feelings, to rage against the unfairness of it all. "We could have had him for 9 more years, she says one night, her voice thick with tears. 9 years, Harper, and Mom took that from us. How do we ever forgive that?" I don't have an answer for her, because I don't have an answer for myself. One Friday afternoon in late November, Walter calls me at work. His voice is weak, strained. "Harper, I think you should come soon. The hospice nurse says it could be days now." I leave work immediately, calling Emily from the road. We meet at Walter's house to find him in bed, hooked up to oxygen, his skin pale and papery. But he smiles when he sees us, reaches for our hands with fingers that shake. "My beautiful granddaughters," he says, "I'm so glad you're here." We spend the next 3 days essentially living in Walter's house, taking turns sitting with him, listening to his stories when he has the energy to talk, just being present when he doesn't. The hospice nurse comes and goes, managing his pain, helping him stay comfortable. On the 3rd day, Walter asks us to open the bottom drawer of his dresser. Inside, we find 2 wooden boxes, beautifully crafted from cherry wood. Our names are carved into the lids. "Your father made these," Walter explains, his voice barely above a whisper. "He started them the week you were born, Harper, and finished Emily's before he died. They're for you. Everything inside is from him." Emily and I open the boxes with shaking hands. Inside mine is a letter addressed to me on my 18th birthday, a string of pearls that Walter says belonged to my grandmother, a silver locket with photos of Thomas and Patricia in happier times, and blueprints for a house. "He designed this for you," Walter says. "Your dream house," he called it. He imagined you living here someday, raising your own family. Emily's box contains similar treasures: letters, jewelry, photographs, and a leather-bound journal filled with Thomas's handwriting. "I started writing to you before you were born," the first page reads. "I wanted you to know me, even if I couldn't be there to tell you myself." We spend hours going through the boxes, reading the letters, examining the blueprints, holding the jewelry that our grandmother wore. It's bittersweet, this inheritance from a father we never knew, delivered by a grandfather we found too late. That evening, as the sun sets and casts long shadows across Walter's room, he calls us close. "Promise me something," he says, his voice barely audible. "Promise me you'll try to forgive your mother. Not for her sake, but for yours. Anger and bitterness will eat you alive if you let them. I know. I spent years being angry at Patricia for what she did to my son, and it didn't change anything. It just made me miserable." "I don't know if I can," Emily says honestly. "Try," Walter insists. "For your father. He never stopped loving you, and he never stopped hoping that someday you'd have a chance at a real family. Don't let Patricia's mistakes steal that from you, too." He falls asleep after that, his breathing shallow and labored. Emily and I sit on either side of his bed, holding his hands, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Around 3 a.m, his breathing changes. The hospice nurse checks his vitals and tells us quietly, "It won't be long now." Walter dies as the sun comes up, slipping away peacefully with his granddaughters on either side of him. The last word he says, so soft we almost miss it, is Thomas. The funeral is small. Besides Emily and me, there are a handful of neighbors, the hospice nurse, and Richard Donovan, Walter's attorney. We bury him next to Thomas in the Beacon Cemetery, under oak trees that are bare now, but will bloom again in spring. Richard Donovan approaches us after the service. "Mrs. Coleman, Ms. Coleman, I need to speak with you both about your grandfather's estate. Could you come to my office next week?" At the reading of the will, we discover that Walter has left everything to Emily and me. The house, his savings, and all of Thomas's possessions. But there's also a letter addressed to both of us. "My dear granddaughters," it begins, "by the time you read this, I'll be with Thomas again. I hope we'll be watching over you, proud of the strong, kind women you've become. The house is yours now. It always should have been. Your father built it for you, dreamed of you growing up in it. Whether you choose to live there, sell it, or do something else entirely is up to you. It's just important that you know it was always meant to be yours. I also want you to know that I've forgiven Patricia, not because what she did was right, but because holding on to anger for 37 years nearly destroyed me. In the end, she made choices based on her own fears and pain. Those choices hurt all of us, but they don't have to keep hurting us. You get to decide what relationship, if any, you want with your mother. But whatever you decide, do it from a place of peace, not anger. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for giving me the chance to know you, even briefly. You brought light into the darkness of my last days. I love you both, forever. Grandpa Walter." Emily and I sit in the attorney's office, both of us crying, clutching this last message from a man we knew for only 6 weeks, but who changed everything. "What do we do now?" Emily asks for what feels like the 100th time. I think about the house on Oak Ridge Road, about Thomas designing it for a family he'd never get to raise there, about Walter living there alone for 9 years after his son died, waiting for us to find our way home. I think about Patricia, sitting in her house in Yonkers, isolated by her own choices, unable to admit she was wrong. "We go home," I say finally. "We figure out what to do with the house." And then we decide about Mom. The decision about the house comes easier than I expect. Emily's lease is up in February, and she's tired of her cramped studio apartment. I've never felt at home in my White Plains rental. The house in Beacon has 4 bedrooms, plenty of space for both of us to live there while we figure out our next moves. Besides, Emily says as we walk through the rooms, making plans, this was supposed to be ours. Dad wanted us here. Maybe we owe it to him to actually live in it. We spend December renovating, but it's more than just updating an old house. It's a process of discovering our father in every nail hole, every layer of paint, every carefully fitted joint. The bones of the house are solid, thanks to Thomas's craftsmanship and attention to detail that becomes more apparent the deeper we dig into the restoration. In the kitchen, we discover he'd installed a hidden spice rack that pulls out from what looks like a blank panel. In the bathroom, a medicine cabinet that's larger than it appears from the outside, utilizing dead space in the wall that most builders would have ignored. In the living room, a series of small cubbies built into the wall around the fireplace, each one perfectly sized for specific items. A spot for reading glasses, another for a remote control, one that's clearly meant for a favorite book. He thought about how people actually live. Emily marvels one afternoon as we're painting the dining room. Most people just build rooms. He built spaces designed for life to happen in them. We hire contractors for the major work, electrical and plumbing updates, a new roof, but we do as much as we can ourselves. It feels important to put our own hands into this house, to add our own marks alongside Thomas's work. Emily paints a mural in her turret room, a landscape of the Hudson Valley, visible from her windows. I refinish the floors in what's becoming my office, stripping away years of wear to reveal the honey-colored oak underneath. At night, we sit in the living room that's slowly coming together and read Thomas's journal entries. Walter was right. They're too painful to absorb all at once, so we ration them out, a few pages per evening. Some entries are mundane observations about his work, his daily life. Others are heartbreaking meditations on fatherhood and loss. Today, I saw a father and daughter at the hardware store. One entry from my 10th birthday reads, "She was about Harper's age, I think. She was helping him pick out paint colors, so serious about whether they should go with eggshell or satin finish. He was patient with her, explaining the differences, letting her make the choice. I had to leave the store. Couldn't watch what I'll never have." Another entry, from Emily's 7th birthday, saw in the paper that they won the regional spelling bee. My daughter, brilliant and talented, and I learned about her from a newspaper article. I wanted to go to the school, watch from the back of the auditorium, just see her face, but I can't. The restraining order means I can't be within 500 feet. So I clipped the article and added it to my collection of Harper milestones. Newspaper clippings are the closest I can get to watching my daughter grow up. "He kept newspaper clippings?" Emily asks, wiping tears from her face. Walter, who's visiting more frequently as his health declines, nods toward a box we haven't yet opened. He kept everything he could find. Any mention of either of you in school newsletters, local papers, anything. He was watching from as close as the law would allow. Inside the box are years of clippings, carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. My name on the honor roll. Emily's art winning a local competition. Both of us in a group photo from summer camp. Articles about my college graduation, my wedding to Derek. Evidence of a father who never stopped following his daughter's lives from the shadows. The renovation becomes therapy. Every wall we paint is a layer of pain we're processing. Every floor we refinish is a step toward healing. We talk constantly as we work about Thomas, about Patricia, about our own childhoods, and how different they might have been if our father had been part of them. "Do you think we would have been happier?" Emily asked one day as we're installing new kitchen cabinets. "If we'd grown up with both parents?" I consider this carefully. I think we would have been different. Whether that means happier, I don't know. Mom worked hard to give us what we needed. We turned out okay, despite everything. But we also turned out with trust issues and control problems and a fundamental belief that we have to do everything ourselves. Emily points out, "You couldn't even lean on Derek when you were married. I've never had a relationship last longer than 6 months because I can't let anyone close enough to potentially hurt me. Those are Mom's gifts to us." She's right, of course. Patricia's trauma became our trauma, passed down like genetic material, shaping us in ways we're only now beginning to understand. As January approaches and the house nears completion, Patricia starts calling more frequently. Her messages shift from angry to pleading, to something that might actually be genuine remorse. "I've been seeing a therapist," she says in one voicemail. "She's helping me understand why I did what I did. I know sorry isn't enough, but I am sorry. I'm sorry for what I took from you, from all of us." Emily and I debate whether to respond, whether engaging with her is opening ourselves up to more manipulation or giving her a genuine chance to change. Walter said we should try to forgive her. I remind Emily, not for her sake, but for ours. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," Emily replies. And it doesn't mean having the same relationship we used to have. We can forgive her and still maintain boundaries. We decide to meet her, but this time on our terms, in our space. We invite her to the house in Beacon, now that most of the renovation is complete. We want her to see what Thomas built, to understand what she kept from all of us. Patricia arrives on a gray February afternoon, parking on the street and staring at the Victorian for several long minutes before getting out of her car. When she finally comes to the door, she looks smaller than I remember, older and more uncertain. "This is the house?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is the house," I confirm, "the one Dad built for us, the one he dreamed of us growing up in." I lead her through the rooms, pointing out Thomas's craftsmanship, showing her the hidden features, the careful attention to detail. With each room, I watch her face cycle through emotions, regret, grief, something that might be shame. In the living room, I show her the journal entries, the newspaper clippings, the birthday boxes Thomas made year after year. "He never stopped loving us," I say, my voice hard. "He never stopped hoping that someday we'd find our way back to him, and you made sure that never happened." Patricia sinks onto the couch, her hands trembling as she picks up one of the journal entries. She reads it, tears streaming down her face. "I told myself he didn't care," she says finally. "I told myself he'd moved on, found a new life, forgotten about you. It was easier to believe that than to admit what I'd done." "What you'd done," Emily says, sitting across from her, "was erase our father from our lives because you couldn't handle sharing us with anyone. You were so afraid of losing control that you destroyed something beautiful. You stole our chance to know our father, and you stole his chance to know us. And for what? What did you gain?" Patricia looks up, her face streaked with tears, and something that might finally be genuine understanding. "Nothing. I gained nothing except loneliness and the knowledge that I damaged the people I loved most. I thought I was protecting myself, protecting you. But I was just perpetuating the same trauma my father caused when he replaced me after my mother died. I became what I hated most." It's the most honest thing she's ever said to us, the most vulnerable she's ever allowed herself to be. "Mom," I say, sitting down next to her, "we can't change the past. We can't give Dad back the 37 years he lost with us. We can't undo the damage. But we can decide how we move forward from here." "I don't expect you to forgive me," Patricia says. "I don't even know if I deserve that chance." "Probably not," Emily says bluntly, "but we're going to try anyway, not because you deserve it, but because carrying this anger is poisoning us. Walter told us that bitterness would eat us alive if we let it. We're choosing not to let it." We spend the next several hours talking, really talking, for the first time in our lives. Patricia tells us about her own childhood, about her mother's death, about feeling replaced and unwanted. She talks about meeting Thomas and being simultaneously thrilled and terrified by how much he seemed to love her. She explains, haltingly, how his enthusiasm about fatherhood made her feel like she was disappearing, like she was just a vessel for his child rather than a person in her own right. "I know that sounds irrational," she says. "He wasn't actually trying to erase me. He was just excited. But I was so young and so scared and so determined not to lose myself the way I felt like my father lost sight of me after my mother died. So I did the worst thing possible. I became the person who erases others." Understanding doesn't equal forgiveness, but it's a start. We establish new boundaries, weekly phone calls where we can talk honestly, monthly visits where Patricia can be part of our lives but not control them, therapy sessions where we work through our family trauma with professional help. "I want to do better," Patricia says as she's leaving. "I want to be the mother you deserve to have all along. I know I can't undo the past, but maybe I can help build a better future." After she leaves, Emily and I sit on the porch, despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun set over the bare trees. "Do you think she can change?" Emily asks. "I don't know," I admit, "but I think she's finally willing to try. And maybe that's enough for now." "We spent time with Walter before he died," Emily says. "He told us to try to forgive you, not for your sake, but for ours." Patricia's face crumples. "I never wanted Walter to find you. I never wanted any of this to come out." "We know," I say, "but it did, and now we have to figure out how to move forward. Mom, I can't have the same relationship with you that we had before. I can't trust you the way I used to, but I also don't want to lose you entirely, so we need to figure out what's possible." "What do you want from me?" Patricia asks, wiping her eyes. "Honesty," Emily says firmly. "No more lies, no more manipulation, no more trying to control our lives. If we're going to have any relationship at all, it has to be on new terms." Patricia nods slowly. "I can try. I can't promise I'll always get it right, but I can try." We spend the next hour setting boundaries. We tell her about moving into the house in Beacon, about our plans to honor Thomas's memory by making it a home. We tell her she's welcome to visit, but only if she can respect our autonomy and our choices. We tell her we need time to heal, and we can't promise when or if things will feel normal between us again. "I understand," Patricia says when we're done. "I know I've lost your trust. I know I may never fully get it back, but thank you for giving me a chance." As we leave the coffee shop, Emily turns to me. "Do you think we did the right thing?" "I think we did the honest thing," I say. "Whether it's right or not, time will tell." We move into the house on Oak Ridge Road in January. It's strange at first, living in a space that was meant for us, but that we're only now claiming. But gradually it starts to feel like home. Emily sets up her art studio in one of the spare bedrooms. I create an office where I can work from home a few days a week. We host our first dinner party in February, inviting neighbors who knew Thomas and Walter, connecting with the community that our family was always meant to be part of. Patricia visits once a month, always calling ahead, always respecting the boundaries we've set. The relationship is different now, more honest, but also more distant. We're learning to see her as a whole person, flawed and afraid and doing her best, rather than as just mom. It's uncomfortable, but it's also real in a way our relationship never was before. In March, on what would have been Thomas's 65th birthday, Emily and I plant an oak tree in the backyard. We read the letters he wrote to us on our birthdays, letting ourselves grieve for the father we never knew, the relationship we never got to have. "Do you think he'd be proud of us?" Emily asks, wiping dirt from her hands. "I think he'd be happy we found our way here," I say. "That we found each other. That we're making this house a home the way he always wanted." That night, I sit in my bedroom, the one that was Thomas's, and I write him a letter. It's something I've been wanting to do since we found out about him, but I couldn't find the words until now. "Dear Dad," I write, "I'm sorry we never got to meet. I'm sorry Mom's fear and need for control stole that chance from all of us. I wish I could have known you, heard your terrible jokes, learned carpentry from you, shown you who I became. But even though we never met, you've shaped my life in ways I'm only beginning to understand. You built this house for me, dreamed of me living here, and now I am. You left me letters and blueprints, and a grandfather who loved me enough to find me when you couldn't. You gave me the gift of knowing I was wanted, loved, even when I thought I was abandoned. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when you had every reason to. I carry you with me now, in every room of this house, in every story Walter told us, in every piece of myself that comes from you. I love you, Dad. I always will. Your daughter, Harper." I fold the letter and place it in the wooden box Thomas made for me, next to the blueprints for this house and the pearls that belonged to my grandmother. Then I open my laptop and pull up the GPS in my old Honda, the car that started all of this. The address on Oak Ridge Road is still saved there, still labeled waiting for you. But now I'm here. I found my way home. I found the truth. And even though it came with pain and loss and difficult revelations, it also came with healing and honesty and the chance to build something real. Emily knocks on my door, poking her head in. "Hey, I'm making hot chocolate. Want some?" "Yeah," I say, closing my laptop. "I'll be right down." As I follow her down the stairs of our house, the house our father built for us, I think about all the ways life surprises us, how a used car with a mysterious GPS address can lead you to truths you never knew you needed, how the worst betrayals can sometimes lead to the deepest healing, how family isn't always who you think it is, but sometimes it's exactly who it needs to be. I'm Harper Coleman Morrison now. I've added my father's name to mine, and I'm finally, truly home.